Thank you for listening to Spot Colts Radio. I'm your host, Matt Danley. We got the AFC Roundtable tonight. We got a great panel for you. Um, we got representatives from our AFC side of ProFootballSpot.com, and we're going to get down to business. We've all got our midseason playoff predictions picked out. We've got some dark horses, and we've got some other good stuff for you. First, I'm going to bring in John Ledyard. He was from last week. John Ledyard's pit lead writer and the AFC North divisional manager. How's it going tonight, John?
It's going great, Matt. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on the show. This should be a great AFC roundtable discussion. Interested to hear some of your all opinions and who you guys think is going to be in the playoff picture here as we get into the second half of the season.
Very much so. Glad to have you back, man. Why don't you we got, for your picks, you had Denver and New England, the 1 and 2 seeds respectively. You see that being any kind of a flip-flop or a possible exchange between those two, or you see Denver definitely taking the 1 seed?
I mean, if I look at Denver right now, I just think they're the best team in football. I do, and I know that might be like a no-brainer to say, and it's kind of boring to make that statement, but I think the defense is 10 times where it was last year. I mean, you take one of the best defensive players in football, and Von Miller, and you put him back on this team where he was lost for injury last year, and you take another one of the best defensive players in football, and DeMarcus Ware, and put him on this team. And you had a secondary that's playing at an extremely high level with a guy like T.J. Ward, one of the best safeties in the game. You got Aqib Talib, you've got Chris Harris, you've got healthy guys all over the field, guys playing at a high level. There's playmakers all over that defense, and I think that's really the biggest difference. The offense honestly might be better than it was last year too. Julius Thomas with another year under his belt, Ryan Clady back. They've stayed mostly healthy, which has helped them a ton, I think. So I just really see them as the best team in football. I mean, New England is capable of beating anybody, and shame on people who said Tom Brady was done, because he's far from done, and he's shown that over the last several weeks. He's beaten everybody, and he's beaten them badly. I think New England's the second best team in the AFC. I thought that before the season started, and I still think it now, and I think that they've benefited for years from being in a weak AFC East conference for sure, and this year it's a little bit stronger, but I would be surprised if they had difficulty winning that division. It's the one they've owned for years. They know how to take care of business against teams who aren't up to their level of competition. I think that's what we're going to see them do again this year. So I think it'll stay 1 and 2, but honestly, nothing would surprise me. Indianapolis' schedule isn't super tough, or New England's schedule, isn't super tough. So I could see them pushing for that 1 seed too, as Denver has a tougher slate to work through that AFC South.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I just think Denver's more capable. I think their depth is greater, and they're built for the long hauls as well. Kenneth, you also have Denver and New England as your 1 and 2. How about you? You think that's set in stone, so to speak, or do you think that they could go either way?
I do think it's set in stone. Like John said, Denver really is just the best team in football right now. They're playing solid football all around. Tom Brady and the Patriots are looking really good. All of a sudden, the past few weeks, he and Peyton are equal in touchdowns and interceptions. They're playing great football, but I think Manning's got just a little more talent on his team than Brady does.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, I agree. I think it's a pretty clear cut that Denver's the number 1 team. I think once you get past Denver, though, it kind of muddies itself up. Ryan, you said you had Denver and Indy as your 1 and 2 respectively. Do you think there's anything that Indy can do to get that number 1 seed away from Denver at all?
I think that's going to be a stretch all the way across. They're certainly capable, but putting it together seems to be the issue. That's honestly the reason I have them ahead of New England. I don't know that they're going to be able to sustain what they've done the last few weeks, and their inconsistencies can crop back up. There's still not that many pass catchers on that squad. So I think there's a lot of room for movement still. We're halfway through the year, but everybody's chasing those Broncos.
Mm-hmm. Talking with Ryan Tracy here, division manager from the AFC West. You and I actually have our top 3 seeds similar here, Denver, Indy, and New England, and that's where I've gotten. I don't think that anybody's going to take out Denver, and set up on top of them for that number 1 seed. However, I do see the number 2 seed being completely up for grabs, especially with New England kind of they're able to get anybody on any given day. And as John alluded to a little bit earlier, Indy does have a benefited schedule here the next week. They do face off, though, here in the next few weeks, which would be a pretty good game to be watching. Chris, you as well have Denver and New England as your 1 and 2. What are your thoughts on that? You think Denver is just there's just nobody that's going to get to them, or are you going to be a homer like the rest of us every so often, and you're gonna say that you guys may have a better chance to take it away from them?
I'm not going to be a homer in this regard. I do think that Denver has the best chance to be the number 1 seed. There's a big game coming up this week with Denver and New England. That could certainly make things interesting. But I think Kansas City showed that Seattle beat them, but I think Kansas City also showed that Denver's beatable. Mm-hmm. If you can keep the ball away from Manning, you can beat him.
Right.
So they showed that they could do that on the road. So I think that going home, they have a chance to beat them at home.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard, but I still think that Denver ends up getting the 1st seed.
Right, I agree with you. Denver, they were doing a photog, so to speak, or whatever, of the home games versus the away games with Denver and Seattle, comparing the two, and actually Denver's a little more successful, just slightly by a game or so at home. So they're no easy task at home. They're no easy task, period, with Peyton Manning at quarterback, obviously. Chris Clark was a lead writer for the Kansas City Chiefs for ProFootballSpot.com, and I just think that Denver can be they're beatable, and I don't think anybody would say anything else. But they just seem to have it clicking in all facets of the game, and I don't think that anybody's really going to take that away from them. I do see San Diego being possibly best rival, so to speak. Not so much their rival, but their best test in the division. I also see Kansas City doing better than a little bit anybody else might expect. Let's go down to the 3 and 4 seeds, and I pretty much see across the board that everybody, aside from myself and Ryan, have Indy at number 3, but those are interchangeable with Indy and New England. What about your 4 seed, John? You have a bit of an interesting pick here for your number 4. You got Baltimore winning the division, and that sort of surprises me a little bit, as well as you saw your quarterback play last Sunday against my Colts.
Yeah, I mean, as a Steelers writer, I get a lot of flack for picking Baltimore to win the division at this point. But I think that 2 reasons why I picked Baltimore to win the division. I think they have the best coaching in the AFC North, and I think John Harbaugh's shown that in the past. I think that's when teams are very close talent-wise, I usually look to coaching, and I think that usually sets a team apart in terms of their preparation and how ready they are. If you look at Baltimore this season, sure, everyone says they've faced lesser teams, but they've beaten lesser teams, and that's more than you can say for the Steelers. It's more than you can say for the Browns, and even the Bengals, who have a game they absolutely should win against Carolina, and they blow it and they end up in a tie, which could come back to bite them before the end of the season. So I think if you look at Baltimore, they're in every game that they've played. Sure, they lost twice to Cincinnati, and they lost to the Colts in a game where they played really well defensively and couldn't get enough done offensively. I think the second reason why I think Baltimore is going to win that AFC North is because they have the best unit, I think, in the division right now. And I know a lot of people are going to look at that and make a face because of how well Pittsburgh played offensively in last week against Indianapolis and against a good defense. But it's also a team that's gone through scoring droughts of 8 quarters and 6 quarters and almost 5 quarters at another point this season. So the inconsistency is there. I mean, they crushed Carolina too, and everybody thought they were back after they went 2-1 after that game. And then they turn around and they lose to Mike Glennon and the Bucs, and then they put up 9 offensive points against Jacksonville, no touchdowns. So it's a unit that has just been really up and down and inconsistent, and I have a hard time trusting them even with a 51-point performance against the number 4 pass defense in the NFL. I still think that moving forward, it's tough to trust Pittsburgh's offense. It's tough to trust either side of the ball for Cincinnati. I mean, Dalton is a little bit up and down. I mean, I granted he hasn't been awful this season for sure, but without A.J. Green, the offense has struggled. He struggles to really put a team on his back and carry them, and the defense has struggled to stop the run. I think they're allowing 128 yards per game. So they've struggled in that regard, and I think that's really unlike Cincinnati, like we saw them led by Mike Zimmer for the past couple of years. But with his departure to Minnesota, I think that defense has struggled to regain some of their mojo that they've played with in the past, even though they're healthier than they've been in the past. So until that team kind of works out its own issues, we've seen them struggle over the past couple of weeks, and their schedule isn't super easy down the stretch either. Not that Baltimore's is, but I think the coaching and the fact that that defense is playing at a high level, they get Jimmy Smith back in a couple weeks from that foot sprain. They've got another good corner in Ladarius Webb. They've got linebackers playing at a high level, and Darryl Smith and C.J. Mosley. We know they're tough up front with Chris Canty and Haloti Ngata. The tough part's the safeties positions. The Ravens haven't played well from the safety position at all this year, but they've been able to play pretty well defensively, actually second in the league at 16.2 points per game defensively. I think that unit and their play is really what's going to set Baltimore apart moving forward in that division. I know it's not a trendy pick by a lot of people, but I think they're the toughest team down the stretch.
I think it's a bit of a toss-up, as we talked about off air a few minutes ago. I think and that's kind of what keeps me away from trying to get another one of their teams in there for the wild card spot. I think they're all going to be real similar. I don't see the Browns really making any moves to fight for that top spot, but I think it really is going to come down to probably the last week of the season to who takes that division, and I think whoever doesn't take the division is going to be left out of the playoffs altogether. Ken's a lead writer for the Tennessee Titans for Pro Football Spot. Ken, you also have Baltimore as your number 4. You at the same time have Pittsburgh, the Steelers, for your number 6 seed in the wild card. What makes you think that they're going to get two teams in the playoffs out of the AC North?
It really comes down to the whole division is very close. You've got I want to look at Kansas City as the number 6, but they still have a very competitive division in with San Diego and Denver. Sure, they've got a cupcake team to play twice a year with Oakland, but they do have to compete with San Diego and Denver. With Pittsburgh, the flashes that we saw against Indy were extremely impressive. Now, I don't think it's enough for them to win the division, but I think they could definitely surge to get the 6th slot. Buffalo is a really interesting prospect, which I never thought I would say, but they could easily make a surge. But I think eventually we're going to see Kyle Orton come back and be Kyle Orton. So it comes down to Pittsburgh and Cincinnati to me, and right now I don't understand what's going on with the Bengals. So I think Pittsburgh can pull off a 6th seed.
Yeah.
Just because they do have a pretty good quarterback with plenty of talent on offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I personally just don't see Cincy putting it together, and I know a lot of people think that Dalton's missing Green, and I don't disagree with that. However, I definitely think that he's missing Tyler Eifert much more, being the fact that he does, as we talked about last week, he checks down as much or more down to his tight ends and his running backs as much or more than any quarterback in the league, and that's what he's really missing. Aside, he's got the one Gresham to where he can get the ball to him, and that's it. Other than that, he didn't really have a weapon out of the upon the line. He doesn't want to go downfield unless he's throwing to Sanu. So I guess he could be missing them both. He could be missing one or the other. I just don't see Cincy putting it together. He just seems to be too safe to me. But then again, that can keep their turnover ratio in the positive for Cincinnati and end up paying dividends in the end. Ryan, you have Cincy at your 4 spot. Do you think they end up pulling away towards the end of the season, or do you agree that it may come down to the last week of the season to who takes that division?
I have a feeling, honestly, that it's going to get sorted out before then. The game this weekend between Pitt and Baltimore, I think, is going to go a long way to make a decision. And with Cincy having already beaten Baltimore twice, I think they're pretty much in the driver's seat. They've got a fairly easy game this week, another chance to get Green back. And, they're clicking enough, I think, to get through, while Cleveland's going to give trouble to both Pittsburgh and Baltimore, I believe. So it's definitely going to be tricky, but I think this weekend might actually go a long way to deciding it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't actually thought about the fact that they've taken 2 from Baltimore already. Chris, you have Cincy at your 4 spot as well. You've also, as Ken touched on early, he thinks Buffalo has a way or a possibility of surging into that six seed, or at least into the wild card. You do have Buffalo at your 6 seed. You think that Buffalo has a better chance to sneak their way in, as opposed to another team from the North or any other division in the AFC?
Currently, yes, and it's based on their defense. They had a situation where they had a quarterback that was costing them games, and now they don't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Orton is not a great quarterback, but he's good enough to win a couple of games, or just help them enough to win games with their defense. I think their defense has a great opportunity to be very big over the next half of the season. I'm sitting here looking at the Bengals' schedule for the next 5 weeks, and they've got the Jaguars, the Browns, the Saints, the Texans, and the Buccaneers.
Right.
If they can win 4 of those games, and the Saints really aren't the Saints this year. The Texans look decent at times, but I think that Cincinnati has the opportunity to go on a winning streak, especially if they can get Green back. But yeah, I do think Buffalo has the opportunity to make a playoff run. Their schedule doesn't look that much more imposing either, so that's kind of where I see it going.
Yeah, I don't necessarily even have a problem with Buffalo squeezing in. In fact, I think it's even a small possibility that they could battle for to take the division, to be quite honest with you. But New England's got to really tumble, in my opinion, for that to happen. And I have a hard time taking Brady out of a top 4 seed and putting in Buffalo at any point in time until they've done it for a couple years. So we got I have for mine. My dark horse, I actually have Denver, Indy, New England, Pitt 1 through 4, and I got both the Chargers and Kansas City coming out of the West for that. The one I don't want to necessarily categorize it as a dark horse for Buffalo, but I think that they can. I think that they can come back, and I think that they can push their way into, at minimum, the wild card. And I think that they can get into a top 4 seed there and take the division from New England. And the thing that's interesting about that is there's definitely no wild card teams coming from the South. I just do not see any team. I don't see Tennessee, Houston, or Jacksonville coming out in the wild card, and I think if anybody does, it's Houston that has the best chance, and they've really got to get hot in order for that to happen. I don't see Baltimore, or I'm sorry, I don't see anybody necessarily coming out of the North either. So when I think about the West or the East, I put both my Chargers and Kansas City in for mine. But I think Buffalo's got the biggest chance for a dark horse. Kenny, do you have a dark horse that you think can squeeze their way into the playoffs?
I do think I have to go with Kansas City, and the dark horse really isn't a good term for them. But the reason I don't see them coming in is because of their Week 1 loss. We saw how bad Kansas City can be. They lost to a Tennessee Titans team that has won 2 games all season, and they're lucky to have won 2 games. So the fact that Kansas City was able to get demolished by that team is awfully concerning. But they have looked very impressive since then, and I think they could sneak in. Thinking about what you said about Houston possibly sneaking in, I think there is a chance with that. I wouldn't put huge bets on it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and having seen him play so many games last year, there's no way he can lead a team to the playoffs. He'll do well in the first half of the season, but the second half he's going to start throwing the game away at the worst possible time. And so, yeah, I'm going to say my dark horse team is Kansas City with Buffalo right behind them.
Let me ask you this, Kenneth. Can they get in with Mallet?
I don't know. We don't know what Mallet can do. He's got a huge arm with questionable accuracy, and he understands the New England Patriots style offense. I think he might offer them a better chance. I know Caleb Colmenero, our Texans lead writer, he wants to see Mallet because we know what Ryan Fitzpatrick offers you. He offers you a guaranteed touchdown or two, but then you can get 2 interceptions easy, and they'll both come in the third or fourth quarter.
Right, crunch time.
Yeah, it's worst possible time. So I think Ryan Mallett does offer them something. At the same time, he could lose the season for them because he's going to go out there, he's going to try to prove himself that he's a franchise possible quarterback, and he could throw it away just as well as Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Right. Speaking of quarterbacks and possible quarterback changes, Vic took over the starting spot in New York for the Jets. Is there anybody that thinks Michael Vick and or the Jets have any chance to get themselves into the playoffs? Feel free to pipe in if there's anybody that thinks that that's a possibility. Please tell me.
If New York gets the 6th seed, then Tennessee will get the 5th seed. I'll say that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that does anything for their franchise whatsoever, to be quite honest with you. I understand that, you're obviously not winning games and you're getting smoked with Geno in there, and he's awful. He really is. But Michael Vick's awful. I mean, I don't know what I don't know what they're trying to accomplish with that, other than to maybe see some balls going through the air just a slight bit faster. You're not getting an increase in completion percentage. You might get a couple scrambles here and there out of Vic, and you might get a touchdown that you don't expect. That's it. You're not going to be competitive in any games, I don't think, if you're the New York Jets.
I think the main thing they get out of starting Michael Vick is at least a change. Maybe it makes a change and it can quiet the fan base for 2 weeks.
Right.
I mean, they're ruthless. So, I mean, they've got to try something different until another opportunity passes. I mean, they didn't need – I hate to say they should have tried to trade for a quarterback, but realistically, they've got a horrible situation there. So I guess they do need to keep with Geno, I guess. I mean, he's thrown, I think I saw 31 interceptions in the past season and a half, which is just mind-boggling.
It's awful.
But
well,
I mean,
you guys have seen a quarterback change as well. They're going with Mettenberger, the Mr. Selfie. So, I mean, does that bring about a change in Tennessee, or does that just simply get a kid that they know isn't their top gun, but they're going to try and use him because they obviously know Jake Locker isn't the answer?
It absolutely brings a change. For the first thing is that the fan base has turned around. There was pitchforks and torches 2 weeks ago before Mettenberger was announced as the starter. Twitter was a crap storm. You had everyone just ready for Wisenhunt's head and Webster's head. And so by starting Mettenberger, they're buying the coaching staff some time. And at least he's got a great arm. He looked good overall. The other week, wow, I just had a brain fart. But I mean, his accuracy was very touchy, and he would have a really good throw, and then he would overthrow Kendall Wright or overthrow whoever. But the offensive line is what really hurt him. He did a great job of stepping up in the pocket when Chance Warmack would blow a block, or when Andy Levine would blow a block, or when Brian Schwenke played okay, but it was Michael Orr and Chance Warmack were just absolutely killing him. Yeah. If it weren't for Taylor Lewan, it would have been a horrible game. And
yeah.
We could have seen Jake Locker back in due to an injured Zach Mettenberger on game 1. but he's got a chance to be the starting quarterback here next year. I don't know for sure. I think Ken Whisenhunt really likes him. The selfies don't matter. It's
Right.
hogwash.
Right.
But overblown by the media. If it had been anyone other than J.J. Watt, we wouldn't be hearing about it.
Right. I thought it was funny. I listened to somebody was talking about, I'm not sure what JJ's talking about when he was obviously on social media, or he wouldn't have known that Mettenberger was doing the selfies, this and that, And
I thought the exact same thing, and I know everyone brings this joke up, and he's talking about high school. It's the same team that wore Letterman jackets a couple of years ago.
I saw that too. It is a joke, but you know what, the best part that came out of the whole selfie thing was JJ Watt's sack dance. It was perfect. I love the selfie sack dance. It was fantastic, and that might be the best thing that anybody does all season after a sack, other than blow out their ACL. So, Ryan.
You can get his knee
No, I'll bet not. Ryan, you guys are seeing some good play out of Alex Smith as well. Are you happy that maybe that the chatter, so to speak, about him being this or that type of quarterbacks kind of died down a little bit? And Chris, you can weigh in on this as well. I think that Alex Smith is completely underrated, although he's not, a top 5 quarterback, so that he's going to get the constant scrutiny.
I think the fan base has calmed down. He was really, to what Kent was talking about a little while ago, he was asked to stretch himself and go outside his normal play that first week of the season against the Titans, and turned into an utter disaster. I think what the coaching staff has finally realized is that they have a quality player that has a specific skill set, and they're asking him to stay within it. And as long as he can do that, he's efficient, he makes good decisions, he can get yards with his feet, and he's adding to the overall play of the offense. Should they get to the point where they have to ask him to go outside his sandbox again, then we might not have the same result, but his confidence is growing, his faith in his teammates is growing, in my opinion, and he is spreading the ball around quite a bit, and that's really what his role needs to be. When you have backs like Davis and Charles, it's really self-defeating to put your onus on your quarterback.
Right. I actually am a big fan of Niall Davis, and I hate playing against him. Even though Jamal Charles is the feature back there, he is a killer. Davis is, and you guys see that just about week in and week out. Chris, I think last year, would you agree with this? And we'll just touch back into the playoffs from last season a little bit in that Colts Chiefs game. I think that if they would have stayed with their game plan late into the fourth or mid and late to the fourth quarter, that the Chiefs would have taken that home instead of trying to run the ball every down. Would you agree with that?
It's hard to say. I watched that playoff game again after a couple weeks because it just hurt so much just to watch the first time.
I'll bet.
But honestly, with the way the secondary was playing, I really don't know that it mattered. If they would have stayed with what they were doing that was successful early. One thing that I will say about this season that I've seen, and although I mostly agree with what Ryan said, I do think that Smith is stretching a little bit in the fact that if you watch some of the throws he makes to Bo this year, he never would have made them last year. And that is a big thing for me. And the reason being is because he doesn't throw a lot to the wide receivers unless they get a ton of separation, and Bo's not ever going to be that guy. But Bo will go up and get contested balls, and he's given him the opportunity to make those plays, and Bo's been efficient in most of those plays. Yeah, he's had a drop here or there, but if Smith continues to look at Bo in some of those instances and goes to him in situations where he's not got a yard on the guy, it's just going to pay dividends in the future. As far as last year's playoffs are concerned, with all the injuries that Kansas City had, it's just really hard to say whether or not even keeping to the game plan would have worked. I mean, you lose Charles the first series, you lose Brandon Flowers. I mean, people were dropping like flies in that playoff game. So We didn't have a safety that could cover deep. I mean, that continuously hurt us last year. So I don't know. It was real painful to watch. I do think that they should have maybe stayed to their game plan a little bit more, but at the same time, I understand why they wanted to run a ball. But it really doesn't fit what Andy did last year for the most part. It kind of fits what he's doing this year. He's kind of changed a little bit, but it didn't really fit what he was doing last year.
Right. Well, we got our picks in, and I'm anxious to see what everybody has for their AFC Championship game. John, I'll start with you, and if all goes according to your setup here, Bengals and Indy will play in the wild card, and Baltimore and the Chargers will go. Who wins those two games?
I think if you look at Indianapolis and Cincinnati, they've met in the playoffs, feels like, for a long time now. I don't think we see much change in there. I think that it's definitely still a situation where Indianapolis is the team with Andrew Luck. I think they're going to be tougher out in the playoffs this year than they've been in the past. I think that Baltimore and San Diego was the other one you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that in that matchup, it could honestly go either way, and maybe I am foolish. I know I listen to Chris. Chris and I talk all the time, and he's always telling me that don't trust San Diego. Like, they don't trust them. Like, here they go. And my fiance, she's a huge NFL fan, and she's always like, I don't trust them. I don't care what their record is right now. Philip Rivers, they're not going to make it. When it comes postseason, they do it every year, and so. Yeah. I'm torn on it. Part of me doesn't want to believe it, but I also really believe that Philip Rivers has played at a higher level the last two seasons than he's ever played at before, and he doesn't get enough credit, I think, for being that type of competitor and elevating his game to that level. Some people hate him, and some people think he's a prima donna, but I think he's grown as a leader, and he's in a position ready to push this team to success in the playoffs. Now, are they going to win the Super Bowl? No, but I think that they're in a position to be able to beat Baltimore in that game and advance. And I like San Diego in that scenario for sure.
I would pick that too, only because I hate San Diego in the playoffs. Anytime I see them in the playoffs, I just plan on them beating somebody. They're going to win their first game. After that, there's not so much of a guarantee, but they're going to win a game in the playoffs if they make it, and I can't stand them. Mm-hmm. So then you got San Diego and Denver in that one. Who you got?
Oh, man, I think that game's going to be one of the best games of the year if that's what ends up happening. And obviously it's a long shot for me to get everything right up to that point. But I think that'd be an awesome game. I think Denver's going to win that game, though. I have a hard time picking against Denver in the AFC, honestly. I really do. I think that team, if they stay healthy, they're just scratching the surface of what they're able to do. And the defense is playing with so much confidence right now. There's not many weaknesses if they stay healthy. I think that if you look at Indianapolis and New England, that game, I think the Colts are going to win that game. It's going to be a little bit of a changing of the guard. And I still am high on New England. I still think they're one of the best teams in the AFC, but the Colts are ready for that test. I think that they've matured as a team. I think when I watch them, throughout the performance against Pittsburgh, I mean, they're super banged up defensively, and maybe that wasn't, the only reason that Pittsburgh torched them. There's certainly issues there. There's certainly weaknesses among the defense, but the AFC's not that stacked, and I think they get past the first game against the Cincinnati team. I don't think is really that good, to be honest. I think you'll see a team that's a force to be reckoned with. When you have a quarterback that can play at the level Andrew Luck does, and some will rip on a throw here and there, and rightfully so, you may take some of those risks, but as you and I talked last week, don't you want a guy who's going to challenge those tight windows down the field, who's going to step up, who never gets rattled? I mean, he's in a situation that it just looks like he's done. There's no hope against Pittsburgh. What, 3 times? Probably 3 different points in that game. He continually battles back. He does not look fazed by anything. And that's said about a lot of quarterbacks, but I don't think it's true about a lot of quarterbacks in the league. That really their level of play is not shaken by the circumstances around them at all. I don't think Andrew Luck's level of play is shaken by any circumstance that he's in, and I think that's rare for a quarterback. I think he's ready to take that next step. I think the Colts are going to bounce back from this little bit of a backslide against Pittsburgh from the success they've been having. And I think they're going to be a formidable team down the stretch. I really do. I think it's a good unit. And I like what Greg Minusky's done with the defense. He's absolutely fully aware of the fact that they don't have maybe the most talent at any position. They don't have true pass rushers without Robert Mathis. But at the same time, he's created a scheme for which those players are able to thrive in. And I think that's what a good defensive coordinator does. You've seen Todd Bowles do it in Arizona. We've seen it all over the league in different places, teams that don't necessarily have the highest level of talent at individual positions, but the scheme allows players to reach their maximum potential by playing within it. And I think that's what Minusky's done. They suffered a setback, sure, against a quarterback that was red hot and offense that peaked at the right time, for sure. And I think that Minusky's going to look at that. He's going to go back to the drawing board, and there's going to be some changes. And so I think that's a big thing for Indy moving forward. But if they're healthy, that defense, I think, is still going to be able to pressure Tom Brady in that game. New England struggled with that, and as good as Brady is, I think that the Colts are going to be revved up for that game, and Andrew Luck is absolutely going to lead them to a victory, which obviously sets up a pretty awesome and entertaining AFC Championship game. Maybe
I would assume that you have Denver in that.
Yeah, I do have Denver in that game, but I think it's a little bit funny that maybe that AFC Championship game is more of what people want to see than Brady and Manning. Now, maybe I'm taking that a stretch because everybody always wants to see Brady and Manning, and if they go toe-to-toe for 35-plus points each this week coming up, then everybody's going to want to see that in the playoffs too, obviously. But I think everybody really would love to see Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning face off in the playoffs. I mean, there's the whole Luck taking over for Peyton Manning in Indianapolis bit that they love to talk about, and rightfully so. But I think you're looking at two of the better quarterbacks in the league and maybe the two best quarterbacks in the AFC North at that point in the season, I think. So I think that's going to be a heck of a game. I have Denver winning it, yeah, but I think that would be a heck of a game.
I would probably agree with that, mainly because we know Denver is going to take. We at least all believe that Denver is going to take the top seed. Kenny, your sets up for the same situation there. You got Baltimore, San Diego, Indy, and Pittsburgh. Who takes those two games for you?
I've got Indy beating Pittsburgh pretty handily, I think. I mean, they're going to want to come back and show Pittsburgh that it was a fluke that Ben Roethlisberger dropped as many points as he did. And then with San Diego and Baltimore, I think San Diego pulls off this win. I think San Diego may finish with a better record than Baltimore even.
Yeah.
But due to the seeding, they're going to be below them. I definitely think San Diego is able to go past them. Like I think John was saying, it was Philip Rivers is playing at an amazing level right now. I can't stand him as a person from what I've seen on television. But I cannot deny that he is just an insanely good quarterback. In my eyes, he's the top 5 quarterback. So all day I see San Diego demolishing Baltimore. Joe Flacco, we know what he's capable of. He's got a great arm. He's got decent accuracy at times, but we also know that he's capable of dropping 4 interceptions in a game.
Absolutely. He, in my mind, is somebody who is flappable. I don't see him having the, I don't know, I guess the short memory. I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of Flacco. I think he has the abilities to get his team to another Super Bowl, but I think that there's better quarterbacks throughout the playoffs there. So if that occurs in Denver and San Diego, who you got there?
I see Denver winning it. I mean, in all honesty, I see Denver pulling off that victory, and then Indianapolis beating New England. So
wow, that's 2 for AFC Championship game for Denver and New England. Chris, but yours actually sets up slightly different. You've got Indy and Buffalo, which would be pretty interesting, and then Cincy and KC in the wild card rounds. What do you got for those 2 games?
I do think that Indy would beat Buffalo in that regard. I think Indy's just a better team, and with Andrew Luck, you're going to continue to play great football. He's always going to put you in a position to win. Kansas City and Cincinnati, It'd be a tough game. Kansas City's offensive line better show up because Cincinnati's defensive line is nothing to scoff at. I think Kansas City has the opportunity to and the ability to pull out a victory there, but it's going to be a hard-fought game, and they better stay true to the way they've been winning over the past couple of weeks if they're going to continue that. If you get to a Chiefs Indy, well, would it be Chiefs Indy at that point? No, it wouldn't be.
No.
It would be Chiefs. Go ahead, Troy.
If the Chiefs beat Cincy, then the Chiefs will play Denver.
Yeah. And if Kansas City plays Denver, it's going to be at Denver.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a tough ball game. I mean, I honestly think Denver would probably come out with a victory. It really just depends on if Kansas City can replicate what they did in Denver earlier this year. If they can control the time of possession and only give Manning a couple of snaps in the third and fourth quarter, they have to be able to put points on the board. That's what they didn't do against Denver when they played them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had 2 drives that came up empty, completely empty. And when that happens, that's just not going to, you can't do that. So I think Denver would come away with a victory at that point.
And you think Indy can go into Gillette Stadium and take out the Patriots?
I think the Patriots are more beatable than some people think, just for the fact that, I mean, I know that flukes happen and Kansas City's win against New England's a little bit of a fluke probably, but New England doesn't have, kind of like what Ryan said earlier, they just don't have the pass catchers that they used to, and they're relying completely on Tom Brady to get them through, every single game. I think that could come back to bite them, and it would set up for Indy beating New England at that point.
Okay. Ryan, how about yourself? Your games would set up as New England and Kansas City, and Cincy and San Diego in the wild card rounds. What do you think would happen in those two?
Actually, I'd have them flipped. I have Kansas City as the 5th seed, and the reason that is that if you look at the schedules, everybody's going to have to battle. The Broncos definitely still have a couple of tough matchups, and the one advantage that Kansas City has is both the Chargers and the Broncos have to come to Arrowhead before the season's over. So I actually see the Chargers as the 6th seed playing New England, and I'll give it to New England at home. I see that happening. I look at Cincinnati, and I do have them squeezing out their division championship, but they're giving up. I think they're 29th in the league in yards allowed rushing, and it just happens to be right about the exact number that the Chiefs were putting up on the ground offensively. I don't see that holding up whether Green comes back or not. The Chiefs are giving up the least amount of yards passing in the league, and they're 3rd in rushing attacks. So I see both sides of the ball going in Kansas City's favor, and Cincy going home.
You see Cincy beating the Chiefs in that?
No, I see Cincy losing.
Oh, okay.
I see New England and Kansas City advancing.
Okay. Well, then you got Denver and Kansas City and Indy and New England.
Yep. And the advantage here is that if it works out the way that I'm thinking, Indy doesn't have to go to New England.
No, New England will be going to Indy, right?
Right, and I see them being able at home and with their crowd to be able to take on the Patriots. I see them being able to sustain whatever Gronk and Brady can throw at them, and I really do see them limiting pretty much everything else. And then really the question mark for me comes down to the 3rd and final rematch between the Chiefs and the Broncos, which in my mind would have been with them splitting already. Coming to Denver is always a difficult situation. But as Chris was saying earlier, the Chiefs were a play away on the 2-yard line from tying up their initial matchup here. I do live in the Denver area, so I have to say here. So I think it's pretty much a toss-up. I don't want to be blatantly homeristic, but I really see this matchup as the year goes on being very, very close. I would probably end up giving it to Denver simply for the home field advantage, and them and Indy in the championship.
That would be crazy, and mine personally, I think Indy's ability to get to the AFC Championship game absolutely depends on them taking the 2 seed, because I think that they would. I mean, we saw what could happen with them in Gillette last season in the playoffs, and the year before that, Luck's rookie year, they went to New England and played and got smoked there too. I think it absolutely depends on Indy getting that 2 seed, and the way mine would scratch up is the Chargers and Pitt would play, and I would take the Chargers in that just because of the matchup, not so much because of the teams involved. I think that Philip Rivers would actually have somewhat of a heyday, so to speak, in there, and New England beating Kansas City in that because it would be at Gillette, and I think that Kansas City would have some struggles with that, although I don't think that weather would be one of the issues with that. And then Denver and San Diego. I think that if there is a chance that Denver can get taken out of the playoffs before the AFC Championship game, I think that it is a San Diego team that can do it, to be quite honest with you. I think that there's just similar to that. I think that their matchup is bad for Denver. Denver would have it at home, so they would have the clear advantage. Although I think if anybody's going to beat them before the AFC Championship game, it's going to be the Chargers. And then also mine is also Denver and Indy. I think that Indy, like I said, with the 2 seed there, they would take the game if they would get the 2 seed over New England, and I can't say that the Colts would beat Denver in Denver with that. Kenny, you got a bold prediction for the AFC Championship? What do you got for us?
I absolutely do. I think the loser of this game on Sunday between Denver and New England will be the winner of the AFC Championship game.
The Denver-New England game?
Yep, the loser will win the AFC Championship game and go to the Super Bowl against God knows who from the NFC.
Right. I think that would be even a more difficult conversation to try to pick apart the NFC group there. That's a whole nother story. I don't think that, obviously everybody knows that Seattle's in good shape, but the Cardinals are hot, obviously. That is a mess.
Thank God we don't write for the NFC. The NFC is a disaster. I have no clue.
I know. I mean, think about it last year. Last year it was the NFC is so strong. There's this many strong teams. Who knows who's going to make the playoffs? And now it's, the NFC is a crap storm. Who's going to make the playoffs? Will anyone?
Right.
Green Bay and wow, they're one of the only teams that's guaranteed a spot this year.
Right, and there's plenty of teams that are high-powered teams that can be left out, in my opinion, as well, which really muckies it up quite a bit. Ryan, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter?
I'm at Ryan Tracy NFL.
Ryan's our division manager for AFC West for ProFootballSpot.com. Chris, give yourself a plug, man.
I am at KCChiefs_58 on Twitter.
And Chris is also lead writer for the Kansas City Chiefs, Spot Chiefs. John, your turn, my man.
I'm at JLedge PFS. JLedge is lowercase, PFS uppercase lettering there on Twitter.
And John's, if you watched last week's episode, is the Pittsburgh lead writer and AFC North division manager as well. Kenneth, go. Who you got, man?
At Kenneth Gillett, plain and simple.
Yeah, pretty easy, isn't it? There's no underscore, no capital, no lowercase sensitive. He's also our lead writer for Spot Titans. I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming on tonight. Tried to kind of condense it quite a bit, and again, Ryan Tracy, thank you. Chris Clark, John Ledyard, and Ken Goit. And I'm your host, Matt Danley. You can catch me at mdanley_PFS on Twitter. And as always, check us out at Pro Football Spots. Fantastic website. It's really come a long way, and it's quite a bit in its infancy, and more great things to come over the next several years. So check us all out. Get on there, create your own conversation, and all the writers are more than happy to be a part of it with you. Again, Chris, John, Ken, and Ryan, thank you guys for being on tonight. I appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you, man.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime, guys, and be ready for next week's episode. For Spot Colts Radio, I'm Matt Danley. We'll see you guys next week.